Let's go ahead and take our first call. Jamie, you ready?
Let's hit that phone.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so this is what I think is a contentious caller. This is David from California, and David, I'll read what the call screener wrote, David, and you can tell me if this is accurate. It says that you enjoy the show, but you think it's almost cruel to discuss these topics with lay people who aren't fully educated in the topic and cannot adequately defend their points. Is that a fair summary, David?
Yeah, I would say I'm contentious, and actually I would say your conversation is more interesting than the conversation I was planning on having.
Oh, okay. Well, so do you have an issue with us, like, talking to people who call in who just don't know things, or like what?
Just like, let me give you a background.
Of course.
First, after listening to you, I'm an atheist. I'm Jewish.
Amen.
Happy I was raised Jewish. When I listen to you, I'm thrilled I was raised Jewish because I don't have the baggage that other people, other religions put on the people.
Sure.
Of course, I asked my rabbi, says, like, if you have a problem with being atheist, he tells me, try being an agnostic, then you get to keep all your holidays, which is cool.
Yeah.
But
it's really funny.
Well, I said, when I still enjoy the show.
Good.
But my point was, you're not going to get William Lane Craig or Jordan Peterson to call up. And the people that do call up, they're not going to adequately defend, it's a hard position to defend in the first place. No one's really, in my opinion, no one's come up with a resonating argument that resonates with me in the past 2,000 years.
And I'm assuming when you talk about an argument, you mean like an argument for God, right? That's what you're talking about?
Right.
Okay, yeah. So, okay, I have a couple thoughts about this. One, in this show in particular, right, for Truth Wanted, we don't just talk about God claims, right? We talk about a lot of different claims that even rely outside of the religious spectrum sometimes, if we're just talking about the supernatural or even just like the medicinal, right? We in that all-encompassing space, I fully believe that everybody has a right to voice themselves, and even if they don't do it well, what happens is when these conversations go out on YouTube and go out on, Spotify and all these places, other people can listen to that and really start to think, there's a lot of things that are happening here. For the caller, this may be the first time that they've actually talked to somebody about this, right? Like I can't tell you how many times I've had people call in and say, oh, well, I don't get to talk about this with other people, so I'm glad I get to talk about this with you. So that's a good thing. I think I'm helping that person kind of think about their thoughts, even if they don't immediately come to the conclusion that I do, which I don't assume that they ever will. I think it is opening their minds a little bit to the other side of the conversation here. There's a lot of people who haven't watched this show, maybe watched other shows, but actually came to the conclusion of atheism, right, through watching other people talk about it, sometimes with better arguments than others, right? I've heard some great arguments from our callers, to be honest with you. I've heard some stuff that has had to make me think, not necessarily about the God stuff, but like other kinds of things that have made me really think about stuff. So I don't know. I don't want to be too elitist in my thinking and say, well, I can only talk to the big guys. I can only talk to like William Lane Craig and stuff. And that makes it kind of official. Because like, first of all, most people don't know who like most William Christian apologists are, right? Most people who are Christians, at least, they are listening to their pastors, they're listening to their community when they talk about these issues, and maybe, they don't have that kind of broader experience on the spectrum of ideas that we talk about, because churches are not safe spaces to talk about ideas most of the time, right? Like they pretend that they do, but they definitely aren't.
It's somewhat like, this is going to be a strange analogy, but like, when you're a kid, and you come home and your parents, you can always talk to us. We're a safe group to talk to. Well, if you're trying to ask about this, that, or the other, you can ask about things that you're not going to want them to know you're asking about. And the same thing with the church. Actually, on Talk Heathen, when I was hosting it with Eric, we had this caller that called in one week and went from a like, hey, I'm not sure about this perspective, and then we talked to him and he said he was going to read stuff and ask around and call back next week, and he called back next week and said, hey, no, I'm free. Basically, he deconverted, and part of it was he went and spoke to his pastor, and his pastor told his parents, and he ended up getting put out, but he was happy about it. So it's sort of interesting people need a place to go. Yeah. And if the market were oversaturated with, incredibly well produced in terms of technical ability and sound, thank you, Vern, and everyone volunteering behind that booth,
Right.
and other people were doing it better than me, I wouldn't want to crowd out the space. But what I saw as a value when I first found an ACA show was people actually having a back and forth conversation about this that I hadn't heard before at all. And that's what really got me thinking, because in my life I'd thought, oh, well, that story, that doesn't really make sense. Or like I'd put the story of like Noah's Ark on a shelf in my mind and not tried to associate it with anything because it didn't mean anything. And until you had people talking about it, and sure, a lot of those people are not going to be William Lane Craig, but it's not like we're hanging up on William Lane Craig and passing out flyers to the guy on the corner who's pretty sure that he is Jesus. So I'm wondering, is it just that we're talking to people that don't have like a developed philosophical argument, or do you mean we're like picking the lowest caliber?
No, well, actually, I'm in agreement with what you're saying.
Okay.
We need a safe place to discuss our doubts. I'm active in 12-step programs, and I deal with people all the time who have problems with the higher power.
Yeah.
And I try to bring them to a place where, your higher power doesn't have to be supernatural. It just has to be something that's available and makes sense to you.
Yeah.
And I leave off, if they want it, if God works for them, fine, as long as they're not flying planes into buildings. I'm good with that.
Sure. Wait, have we flipped your mind on this then? Are you in agreement with us now?
No, but what I'm saying is, I'm saying, now, like I said, of course there's valid conversations, and you make, a place to talk about do we have free will?
Yeah.
If you believe in God, what is God's will? Those are great conversations, but when you have people calling up that are just trying to challenge you, and trying to say, that if you're an atheist, like I was just watching a YouTube video where this guy was saying that if you're an atheist, the worst thing is humanity.
Yeah.
There's nothing you're not going to have an intelligent conversation there.
Well, okay, well, that's another thing, David.
In my opinion, you're gonna rip them to pieces.
Sure. And here's the thing, David.
It seems like you're being a bit of a bully when you let that kind of.
I can't speak.
I disagree. I'd say we're standing up to a bully, because that person is going to inflict that opinion in that way on anyone. And if I have to be the kid that stands up and takes that on the jaw so that everyone else in the playground can see, actually, it's not that bad when this bully comes from you, I'm willing to do that.
Yeah. And when we speak out against, first of all, every host has different approaches, right? About how they approach a caller like that, which Jamie and I both have had experience with that, right? Where it's
Neither of us is Matt.
It's the guy that calls in and is like, "Oh, I'm just gonna try to rip this guy to shreds," and they're not interested in having their minds changed. But standing up to that and being bold in the face of a challenge like that can be empowering for people as well, right? That's another function. Like for myself, when I first was watching ACA shows and I saw people were not only defending their position, but like standing against people who were calling them nasty things and saying, no, this is right. What I'm defending is right. And what you're defending is not only wrong, but sometimes even dangerous and bigoted and all kinds of the other things that go with that, right? So there is a value there. If it's not for the caller, it's for the viewers sometimes, right? I try to take a very caller-centered approach. I treat every caller with the same respect. At least I try to. I'm not perfect. But that being said, there is still value to that for the people who watch this, even more so than maybe the caller sometimes, right, David? I mean, what do you think?
Well, I was asking, and maybe I forget. See, I come from a place where when I grew up with people like that getting in my face. I'm going to go to hell because I don't accept somebody. Yeah. And I grew up thinking it was laughable. I never felt threatened by it.
Yeah. But some people do.
It's hard to me. It's hard to me to see that you're standing up to a bully, because I've never seen them as being powerful. I just, live your life.
You'd be surprised.
Stay out of the laboratory, please.
David, when I first became an atheist, I was in college. All right, I was still living with my parents at the time, or I had to move back in with my parents. I didn't have a lot of social power or mobility. I couldn't, and not to say that my parents were oppressors. I don't believe that. My parents are good people, but they have problematic beliefs, and that caused issues in my relationships with them and also with my community and other people that knew me as a Christian, right? So in that time of my life, I didn't feel empowered at all. I didn't know any other atheists in real life really before I started getting involved in the community and stuff. Again, seeing other people talk about it, that does have a sense of empowerment for people who don't have that, right? I'm glad that I can be a voice for somebody, honestly. as narcissistic as that sounds. I mean it in the best way possible, right?
It's the same good feeling you feel when you do anything good that helps someone else.
Yeah.
It just so happens that this also means you get to show up on camera and everyone knows your name.
And sometimes that means dunking on fools. Okay, sometimes that means dunking on fools. I'm not going to dispute that, but we can do it in a way that makes sense for people, right? We can do it in a way that can be productive, and we can do it in a way that causes people to think about things that they otherwise may not think about. Ultimately, that is my point.
I would add on to that. I agree with everything you'd say. I'd add the one clarifying factor for me is that if a fool needs to be dunked on, it's because they came up into your paint to dunk on you.
They came into my court. You come into my house.
You came onto my court
on the day of my daughter's wedding.
That I gotta give you.
Yeah. But yeah.
Anyway, David, have we convinced you of why we do what we do here? Or have you know, what do you think?
I have a better understanding.
Okay.
In the sense, like I said, because I didn't have the same experience.
Yeah.
You know, when I told people first time I told people I don't believe in a supernatural God, or that, everybody's said, so who cares?
Yeah.
I mean, it was a lot easier for me. So I'm not your focus of
right. I came from Waco, Texas, David. Okay, I don't know where you came from. It's probably not Waco, Texas. You know what I mean? Like, I think that is, and I mean this in the most sensitive term possible. There is a privilege that comes with being a non-believing person in a majority non-believing area, right? In an area where people do not care.
There are better and worse places.
Sure.
There are easier and harder places to live life as a non-believer.
And there's a spectrum to that too. I'm not saying that I had the worst time possible. I would rather take my position than some of the ex-Muslims I've talked to that come from Muslim majority. You know what I mean? It's
Saudi
like,
Arabia.
there's different spectrums to that, but like that was still a struggle that I had to deal with. And now that I'm an adult, now that I pay my own bills and stuff, like, it's not as big of a problem. But I had to transition to that. I had to figure that out. And so hopefully, what we do is a resource for other people who are also figuring out, and also just are passionate about these issues, who still think that it's important, despite the fact that they may even be from regions where belief doesn't play as big a role. At least Christianity doesn't play as big a role, right? So anyway, David, I think that's all the time that we got for this call. But I appreciate the discussion.
Nice talking with you.
Nice talking with you too.
Thanks for calling in, David.
It's important. I'm using a lot of Gen Z terminology today, but it's important to vibe check us, Jamie. It's important to figure out why we're doing.
Are you saying it's important for me to vibe check y'all?
No. For everybody to figure out what we're doing here, right? Because what are we doing here? Right?
Yeah.
Are we here to
Otherwise
shut people
you lose
down?
The script real fast. Yeah.
Are we here to make fun of? I'm not here to make fun of people. Sometimes people look bad when they make their calls, and it is a call-in show. They don't have to call in to talk to us. I'm not going up to people.
If someone, if it was a I don't know, MMA open call, and you were in the octagon, and it was some sort of event that they did for newcomers, and you were a champion, and then someone showed up in a clown outfit and tried to beat you with a squeaky rubber duck, no one could really blame you for making that person tap out, as humorous and cartoonish and circusiousness that brings. But yeah,
you have a beautiful mind for analogies, Jamie.
Thank
I don't
you.
know where your brain. I don't know what you do to come up with these. But
yes, you can buy me dinner.
Anyway, I appreciate when people want to know, hey, why are we doing this? Is this a good? I'm convinced that this is a good. But if there's better ways for us to do what we do, I'd love to hear about that too.